Yes, people, welcome back to Toronto Hoop Talk, another live stream for you today. Primarily talking about Damian Lillard, the Raptors, things that might be going on within the realm of those two subjects. If you're watching this back afterwards, you're just as appreciated as the people watching it live with me right now. Make sure everybody who likes the content, who enjoys watching these streams, make sure you guys are liking the stream or pressing the like button on the stream, subscribing to the channel. These are kinds of engagement that help the channel grow, and the bigger the channel gets, the more content I can do. So, to start off today's stream, I'm gonna pull some things up on on the screen. So I have a couple tweets here. We'll start with this one. So it's from Woj saying their front offices talking to Portland today were left with the impression that GM Joe Cronin is pursuing a star level return package for Damian Lillard and that Cronin plans to look well beyond the Miami Heat to find one. So pretty consistent message. Um, there's been rumor circulating that Dame's strong preferences for Miami. I think Brooklyn was mentioned as an option, but Miami was the far and ahead like preference for Dame. And some people were suggesting that outside of Miami, he just has no interest in playing for other teams, and kind of like a Kawhi situation where there's a destination that is being sought out, and other options aren't really viable at all. Second tweet, a little bit more details. The Trailblazers do not plan to cooperate with Damian Lillard on his trade request to the Heat. Portland open for business everywhere in the league on trading Lillard. Blazers seeking a combination of young players, draft picks, and cap relief. Miami has no advantage over other teams because of Lillard's demands. So this is also coming from Woj. When information like this comes from Woj, you tend to take it as, set in stone kind of reporting. So we're left to believe that everything that he said is at the very minimum well reported and well sourced. What I mean by that is that this is coming from Portland or it's coming from Dame, right? His information is going to be coming from the source. Now, the thing that makes it tricky when assessing how true information is that just because information is well sourced doesn't mean that it's the truth. What I mean by that is that sometimes you get things out in the media for strategic purposes, right? There's an ends to a mean. The purpose is you want to get some type of advantageous point across, something that'll give you some leverage. So the fact that Woj is reporting these things doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It just means it's well sourced. It means that it's coming from somebody whose voice you can rely on. And realistically, in the case of Dame and the Blazers, the information is probably either coming from Dame or the Blazers. However, both parties have their own vested interests, right? They both have an aim, and they're both going to put information out that they feel like benefits their aim. So there's a bunch of angles I want to look at here because, of course, Raptors fans as a whole, a trade for Dame is probably something that we would welcome. We obviously are lacking star power, shooting, a number one option, like whatever you actually like, all the things that we don't have that we would want, Dame provides realistically. So Dame is probably someone that a lot of Raptors fans would want to see traded for. But as for what's going to happen, you have to, I think, look at all the different parties involved, look at everybody's angle, and kind of see how viable a trade would even be. So the first place I'm going to start is the Blazers' angle to all of this, right? Like I said, the fact that Woj is reporting this stuff to me means that it's well sourced, meaning that the information is coming from the Blazers. But regardless of what the Blazers' intention is, getting this information out is the right chess move. What I mean by that is if they plan to honor Dame's trade request and trade him to the Heat, this is the right thing to do. This is the correct chess move, right? You don't want Miami to know that they're the only option. You don't want Miami to understand that, hey, Dame's not going to accept a trade anywhere else, so we can lowball Portland. Even if the plan is to trade to Portland, you need the whole NBA community thinking that everybody has a chance. So with that being the case, If their plan is to trade him to Miami, you put this information out. Now, if the plan is, if that's not the case, if the plan is just to trade to the highest bidder, then obviously this is again the correct chess move. You want the whole NBA community to know, hey, we have an asking price, we need that met, and everybody has a chance. So, particular to this information about Portland being open for business everywhere in the league, and Miami having no advantage because of Dame's trade request, this is just like a natural, logical next step in this process, right? This doesn't actually give away too much truth once to one side or the other in this situation. So I don't particularly look at this bit of information from Woj as all that significant. And the reality is I think the deciding factor for what's actually going to happen is the relationship between Dame and Portland's management. And it's a tricky one because there were earlier stages in his career where he painted it like him and Portland's guys up to like were like this, right? But there's been a lot of change. The GM has, I think, changed. There's twice. There's been three GMs while Dame's been there. I believe there's been an ownership change, or I believe Paul Allen was the owner initially and he passed away while Dame was there. A lot has changed as far as the people at Portland that Dame has been dealing with. So I'm not entirely sure what that relationship looks like. I think if there's no positive or strong relationship existing between the Portland management and Dame, there's no reason to believe that they would honor his trade request. It's not in anybody's best interest to take a less than to take a offer for Dame that's not the best, right? It's only in your best interest if you have a relationship with Dame that basically means like you want to do him a solid. This is a person that's been loyal to you. You want to facilitate his exit in a way that honors the relationship. If that's not there, I see no reason for them to not take the highest offer. So that's something that you have to either like you either guess what the relationship is like or you try to look at the signs that have maybe been in front of our eyes the whole time for what the relationship might be like. I personally think the relationship is pretty weird, and part of the reason is that I feel like there's been a lot of public negotiating when it comes to Dame's relationship with Portland as of late. Like, again, I remember for a long time he was making it seem like he was tight with them and we would just never see anything in the media. But in the last 1.5 to 2 years, we've seen a lot of presence in the media, a lot of Dame wants to do this or he doesn't want to do this, or like a lot of reports leaking out about Dame's intentions and his concerns and stuff like that. The fact that that's going to the media as opposed to directly to the front office means that that line of communication isn't there. That trust and that just like the necessary kind of environment for that conversation to happen isn't there. These things have to happen through the media. These negotiations have to happen publicly. That's one thing. And then I even look at the coverage of the whole draft process with regards to the mass media, like just like the flood in the media of, oh, Dame is in on Portland's draft recruiting process. He's talking to guys like Scoot and he's looking at young players. And for all that to happen and then for Dame to request a trade, that doesn't actually even make sense. So again, I look at that and I'm like, well, that was just public posturing. That wasn't really real either. And again, like all the posturing between Dame and the Blazers that's happened publicly in the media, it leads me to believe that the relationship isn't there. And with the relationship not being there, I don't think there's any guarantees that Portland honors his trade request and honors his desire to be a Heat player despite any other circumstances, right? Like, if Miami can't put their best offer on the table, I have a hard time believing that Portland is going to trade him to Miami. So, with that point being covered, the next thing to look at is how will the Raptors and teams that aren't the Heat look at Damian Lillard as an asset? So, I look at it like this. You have to keep a couple things in mind with Dame, and I'm going to pull up some stats really quickly to get my point across better. But he hasn't quite been healthy for a good 4 years now. update the screen that I'm sharing. Just bear with me a second. So, if you look at this, I'm on the screen well. All right. All the way from the beginning of his career. Whoa, that doesn't work well. Never mind. All the way from here to this year to 2018. That really doesn't work well. 2018, 2019, right? You're looking at a guy who's playing between 73 to 82 games consistently, right? A player that you can depend on, a player that's doing really well, and someone you can rely on. And then you look at the past 4 years, you see 66, 67, 29, and 58. So Damian Lillard's recent history is that of being injured. You add the fact that he's getting up there in age, he's going to turn 33 in about 2 weeks. This is a guy that has 4 years left on his deal, really big numbers. I can actually just may as well pull up the information while I have this screen open. You're talking about a guy who has 45 mil. Whoa, 45 mil this year, 48 next year, and then a max figure that this is pending to change. It's going to depend on where the salary cap is at when this season comes about. But it's 58 and 63 million. So sizable contract. Salary hits on the remainder of his contract. A player that's 33, a player that is getting up there in is racking up a lot of injuries. You have to be careful about how you assess Damian Lillard. I think he's an easy player to get lost in the hype with because of how good he's been for an extended period of time. This is a guy who we've seen produce at really high levels in really big moments. He has some of the most awesome clutch moments in the league. He has such an exciting game to watch with the way he shoots threes from a distance off the dribble. Like he's very easy to get excited about in terms of like a basketball player on your team. But the reality is you're not trading for the past, you're trading for a player's future, right? You don't get anything that Damian Lillard did for Portland. You're going to get what he does for you in the future. And when you look at what you're paying for, and when you look at how his body's held up for the last 4 years, and you factor the age he is right now, you factor how much older he's getting, I don't think he's actually that crazy of a trade asset. I don't think teams are going to be here offering the world for him because the reality is Damian Lillard is a win now move, right? So that's, I guess, the thing I've been building up to with everything that I've said thus far. You don't trade for Dame unless you think we're winning a championship right now. So I'm weeding out a lot of teams that I don't think are able to make a championship push with a Damian Lillard trade. And to be honest, you have to then think about Toronto and think, is Toronto, what is it? What does a Damian Lillard trade looks like? Uh, what does a trade look like for Damian Lillard that keeps the Raptors in contention for a championship, right? Um, and then whatever that trade is, does Portland have any reason to accept it? And the reason would have to be that it's the best offer on the table. So from the Raptors standpoint, how do you put together a trade offer that's both the best offer in the NBA and also one that leaves you able to win a championship? So that's why I would look at the Raptors in particular, and I would say essentially you have to keep Pascal Siakam. That's a non-negotiable. There's no way you get around that. You don't trade Pascal and then have Dame basically functioning with Scotty Barnes and OG as his number 2 and 3. Scotty Barnes and OG would, in that situation, be in higher roles that they've ever been. And you don't win a championship with a 33-year-old and two guys functioning at a role higher than they've ever functioned before. So that doesn't make sense. You have to keep Pascal. You have to keep, like, I don't think Portland would want Jakob Pertl, so you have to keep Pertl. Our main assets at that point would be what? OG, Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent, Precious Achua, Grady Dick. who just signed a contract today, so he can't be traded for like 6 weeks. So if this is going to happen soon, he's not on the table at all. Um, those would be our assets. And then again, you have to take a step back and look at those assets. Scotty Barnes, great young player, probably a highly rated prospect, but he's coming off a bit of a down year. Precious Achua at one point looked like a player with a lot of promise, and he still very well could be, but he's coming off a disappointing year. Gary Trent is coming off a disappointing year. Um, who else did I mention? OG had like a standard OG year, but like his injury history is one that keeps piling up. Again, you can't say with confidence that those players are like really that desired by the rest of the NBA outside of OG. So with that being the case, what does it take? Does it take both of OG and Scotty to have the best offer in the NBA? And if that's the case, is that worth it? Like, is it worth trading both those assets to have Dame, Siakam, and then at that point your third option is who? Um, Gary Trent. I think Gary Trent is the third option in that scenario. Is that something you're willing to do? I don't. I would personally like. I would still want to. No, yeah, no, I don't know. Because also the thing is, it's not just that you're making a win now move for Dame for the next 2 3 years. You can't think about it that way. The only way to justify bringing a player of his level in and compensating him this well for a player that's injury history looks the way it does, you think about right now. You think about that immediate season, what you can do with the Damian Lillard. And I don't know. I don't think that team. I would. I'd be comfortable taking the bet if it didn't mean parting with both Scotty Barnes and OG. But parting with both of them, part of me feels like you need a better shot at a chip or more chances, like more years with a crack at it. So yeah, I'm not particularly sure. I'm not particularly sure like if that's even the best move. So is it possible to only part with one of Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby and uh, use other pieces to get some value and then trade our draft picks, right? So how highly does Portland look at a Gary Trent? How highly does Portland look at a Grady Dick? How highly does Portland look at Precious Achua? These kind of guys. If they don't particularly rate those players highly, we don't have a whole lot of assets. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is while we have only one draft pick traded in the future, because it's a conditional draft pick, we can't actually guarantee the picks that we trade to Portland because that pick has to convey to the Spurs before the picks afterwards open up, right? Like our Spurs pick could be conveyed in 2026 if we are bad enough initially. And of course, that wouldn't happen with a Dame trade. But the reality is, you can't assure the picks you're trading until that one pick is actually conveyed and gone to San Antonio. So that's just another thing to figure out. I personally don't know how that rule works. If you could basically just agree to trade picks, and it will be like, hey, this starts as soon as we can after the San Antonio pick is traded. I don't know if that's how it works. Or if they would have to essentially block out the years that are set aside for that pick and then start conveying picks afterwards. But the fact that we have a first round pick that's conditionally traded to San Antonio complicates the thought process with offering picks to Portland in a potential Dame trade. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, on the Raptors side of things, right? If you try to just like shut down that way of thinking and stop thinking about the practicality of constructing a trade and the like X's and O's of what a team would look like with Dame. You put that stuff to the side, right? When it comes to just the front office wanting, I think, a justification for some of the moves they've made, I think they would really, really do all they can to get Dame, right? Because in theory, if you get Dame, you kind of get a pass for a lot of the mistakes you've made. What I mean by that is, I think a lot of Raptors fans look at a bunch of different situations that we've navigated in the last 3 seasons as missed opportunities to get assets for players that we would eventually lose, right? So I think the Kyle Lowry situation, we got Precious Achua, but I know that there were Raptors fans that think we should have got more. Um, Van Vliet obviously just left for nothing. We lost Ibaka and Gasol and literally got nothing back, right? Not only did we get nothing back, we weren't able to replace them, partially because we only had the mid level exception to replace the centers, and that doesn't necessarily get you the highest caliber of free agent. And we only had one crack at it, and we failed with Aaron Baines. So we've lost a lot of value in the name of trying to get better, right? The easy route would have been if we parted with a lot of these older players after the championship for young players or draft picks or just generally future, like long term thinking, long term based assets. That would have been easy. But this team is kind of like foregone getting those long term assets in the name of being as good as possible in the short term. You can kind of look at that thinking and say, hey, it's justified now that we got Dame, right? We there'd be no point in us going for Dame if we were a team full of 22 and 23-year olds. But we kept in like a win now mode, and we got some players on the team that might be situated for that kind of a situation. And now we have Dame as well, right? It would be a easy out for the Raptors management. It would be an easy win. It would be something that they can, right or wrong, they can look back at all those failed opportunities and be like, look, it all built up to this. So from the Raptors side of things, I think that they would be all in on trying to get Damian Lillard, if not for all the valid basketball reasons, and um if not for like that those reasons and just like being opportunistic in the market, it's sheerly just an opportunity for them to get a win and for them to justify their approach to things and secure their jobs for a longer period. It's a very practical way to turn around a lot of negative commentary surrounding the Raptors front office. So with that being the case, I've covered I think the Blazers angle, the Raptors angle, the rest of the NBA's angle in terms of maybe not looking at him as the best asset because of his age, um, and his contract and his injury history. The last angle to think about is Damian Lillard's angle, right? So, what does Dame want? What teams do, like in terms what does he want in terms of the team that he wants to go to? And bigger than that, what is he willing to do to make sure that that happens? In the case of Kawhi Leonard, which is a situation that I think a lot of people are creating parallels for in this case, right? Kawhi Leonard was on a 1 year deal about to hit free agency when he was demanding a trade to Los Angeles. Damian Lillard has 4 years left on his deal. Um, So if he gets traded to a team that he doesn't want to go to, it would be a lot harder to have him show up. And what I mean is that um basically if the way his contract is set up, the next team he gets traded to, they're probably going to have him for the life of the deal because that contract is probably going to age poorly. You The reason why I said you make that trade to win now is because you just look at the bad years of the contract as the price you have to pay for the good years of the contract, which is right now, to potentially win a championship, right? For him to go to a team that he doesn't want to go to, he's locking in for the like probably 4 years. So for him, the stakes are a lot higher than Kawhi, who could say, you know what, whatever. Maybe I didn't initially want to go to Toronto, but it's just 1 year. I'll just go and see what happens. It's a lot different for Dame. Um, so I think his stance has to be stronger because the stakes are higher for him, and that just makes me wonder. Uh, how much conviction does he have in the Miami as a preferred destination? Is he willing to actually sit out? Is he willing to talk to a team and say, "Hey, I know you guys are close to agreeing on a trade. Don't do it. I'm not showing up." That's a key factor. Earlier in the stream, I highlighted the fact that Portland's relationship with Dame is going to be a key factor in how they want to approach things. Dame's conviction in where he wants to go is another big thing. Those are the two most key factors. Those are two things that I think are unknowns that um we can't get our fingers on the pulse for actually what the situation is. Like I said, everything else I feel like you can pretty easily figure out what's going on in a lot of other circumstances. I think you can figure out that a lot of the rest of the league is going to look at Dame and be like, great player, big contract, injury history. If we have to do this trade to make a championship push, we will. But if not, nah, it's not the best situation, right? Like it could get better. That's easy to figure out. It's easy to figure out that I think the Raptors would really be into a trade like this. It's easy to figure out that um what else is involved? But yeah, those are easy things to figure out. It's not easy to figure out whether Dame has a relationship with the front office and how that's going to dictate Portland's approach. It's not easy to figure out how committed is Damian Lillard to going to Miami. So those are two things that are definitely going to impact this situation and where he ends up. Gonna transition to the next thing I wanted to actually no, real quick before I move on. There is one last aspect of this that I wanted to look at. And actually, no, I can weave it into the next thing. So I'll transition to the. All right, so this is an article by Kevin O'Connor talking about different teams that could trade for Damian Lillard. So it says here the Heat aren't a lock to land Damian Lillard. And he goes through a bunch of teams that in theory could get it done. And he says about the Raptors, years ago, the Raptors scooped Kawhi Leonard with 1 year remaining on his contract and then won a championship. What's stopping them from tossing 3 firsts, a swap, OG Anunoby, and some other filler to Portland? Lillard would be a dream fit next to Siakam, Barnes, and the newly re-signed Jakob Poeltl. So what I want to say here is, like, I kind of talked earlier about how the Kawhi Leonard situation is going to make people draw parallels to this situation. This is a part of the reason why I'm doing this stream, because whether people like it or not, this is inevitably a point of conversation. The Raptors potentially doing a part 2 to what they did with Kawhi is eventually going to be something that people talk about. And if anything, it can be seen as like a clear bit of history that allows us to establish pretty concretely that the Raptors would do it again, right? It happened once, it worked, it was a success. Why would they not do it again? As far as it actually happening, he mentions here 3 firsts, a swap, OG. I mentioned earlier about how I think parting with both Scotty and OG would be too much for me in this situation, because I don't think it leaves us in the most championship ready situation first, like if a trade happens. If this trade in theory is on the table and it's one of the better options for Portland, I think that's awesome for Toronto. But of course, we have to see what Portland wants and what other people are putting on the table. That's information we'll never actually reliably have access to, but we can listen to the rumors and try to do our own deductions for what's actually happening. What I will say before I get off of this, I think it's worthwhile to look back at the initial bit of information from Woj. This one here where it says Blazers seeking a combination of young players, draft picks, and cap relief. So if we use that as a formula and look at how the Raptors can fit within this, I think we could say pretty quickly that cap relief is something we can give to Portland. And the reason that I say that is because we have a series of contracts that are 1-year deals. So, and these are contracts that Portland can just get rid of if they don't want the players, but not have any cap hits in the future, which isn't the case for a team like Miami, who they would have to trade them Duncan Robinson. That's a contract that it hurts you for 2, 3, 4 years. It's a longer deal. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but it hurts you going into the future. Um, I think a team like Brooklyn doesn't really have bad deals like that, but that's a big thing for Portland is or sorry, for Miami is that they have to trade them Duncan Robinson to make the money work, and Duncan Robinson is a bad deal. Rumors have already come out that Portland is looking for a third team to move Duncan Robinson to in the event that they do trade Dame to Miami because they want no parts of that contract. However, in our situation, you look at players like and oh, go back to this screen and we'll go to the trade our salary cap sheet to better illustrate the point. But um, Toronto Raptors, multi-year summary. Of course, it's going to take its time loading. Right. Okay. So um, these are the deals I'm looking at. Thad Young, Otto Porter Jr., Malachi Flynn. That is roughly $18 million worth of salary that's expiring. So that's a part of what we trade them to match salaries that they don't have to hold on to, they can get rid of, and they don't suffer any cap consequences going forward. Obviously, if we're trading players like if we're trading a Gary Trent, if we're trading, well, Gary Trent's supposed to get an extension, so it doesn't apply to him. But if we're trading them OG, that's another expiring deal. Now, of course, they would probably want to pay OG or trade OG if they can't extend him. But the point is that we can offer them a trade entirely comprised of pieces that have no salary the next year. So Portland can effectively get their salary back. Uh, like basically get the Dame salary off their books and get that space back for them to use how they want it. Now, if you look at Miami, let's say, if you look back at Miami, they would trade Kyle Lowry. That's one piece that could be an expiring deal that allows Portland to do the same. But that being said, Kyle Lowry might be a part of what they consider the team they could win a championship with, right? Kyle Lowry is there because of a great relationship with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy might not be that thrilled if Kyle Lowry is a part of the team. Obviously, is that a good enough reason for this to be a stumbling block for a trade for Damian Lillard? No, it shouldn't be. But you never know. They might not. They might like the intangibles that Kyle Lowry provides. And if you're making a championship push, Kyle Lowry is probably the player you want on your team. That being said, right, Kyle Lowry's deal isn't enough. Either Hero's deal or Duncan Robinson's deal, right? This is 19 and 19 into the future, right? Whereas if you make a trade with the Raptors, none of this you have to deal with. Tyler Hero, right? Tyler Hero has a very defined skill set for what he's good at, but I think that defined skill set, there's questions to be asked about how good it is in the context of winning basketball. So with that being the case, Portland might not want to deal with all this. It might be better for them to have no money in future years. That's something we can provide them with the deals that we have that are expiring. That's part of the reason why we kept Thad Young's unguaranteed salary and let it convert to guaranteed salary because this would benefit us. Looking at the rest of what we have here, yeah, honestly, the only even if we were to include a player like Chris Boucher, right? This is only 1 year of salary and it's sitting at 10.8. So all things considered, we have the ability to provide them the cap relief that they're looking for. Actually, let me look at Portland's situation and see if there's any other bad contracts they might want to get off the books. Wow. Okay, so Jeremy Grant, that's too recent. So they wouldn't be trading that. That's Dame. Anthony Simons, no, that he's still an asset. Yusuf Nurkic, that's still asset adjacent. But I mean, even like, let's say that was a part of it, right? Let's say they want to get rid of this contract. We can do that for sure. Um, That would be taking on quite a bit of salary. We would be taking back around 60 million in salary. But that just means we'd have to part with a little over 50, and I'm looking at what we have and what our avenue is to get there. Our avenue to get to 50 worth of salary, 14.3 plus that's 18. So we could get to 20 mil in salary with Joe Wieskamp, Malachi Flynn, uh, Otto Porter Jr. and Thad Young, right? These are pieces that are just their salary filler with no future guaranteed money. Uh, you add OG, that's another 18. Now you're sitting at around 38. So if you add Chris Boucher, you get there. So we have the ability to, if need be, we can swap Chris Boucher and Yusuf Nurkic to, or add them to the deal to give them even more cap relief, right? So that's something we can give them. As far as young pieces, we have, again, I don't think we have the ability to provide them like with phenomenal out of this world young pieces. But I look at Miami. Does Miami? No. If Tyler Hero is their idea of a young piece, we beat that with OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby is a better young piece. He's a young piece that might not want to stick around in Portland, but then again, if he wants to have more on-ball duties and he wants to run a team, Portland might be the perfect situation for him. They would be a young team that there's no pressure to win or do well on, and he could be on the ball all he wants. So that's an option for sure. What was the last thing? Oh, right, draft picks. Okay, so this is where I'll look at our draft picks because that's the last thing we have to look at for the formula future draft picks. What website does it well? I think this team does. Or this website does. Okay. So 2025 to San Antonio. If it hasn't conveyed because of protections, 2026. If it hasn't, 2027. And then at that point, I believe it conveys to second round pick. Nah, it has to be a better website because the conditions should be a part of the draft pick. Okay, here it is. So top 6 protected throughout the years, or else it conveys to 2026 and 2027 second round picks. Well, that being the case, right, you have to keep in mind in the NBA, you can't trade back-to-back picks of your own. So if we can't trade a pick till 2026, or our draft picks are kind of committed to the Spurs until that point. I guess we can begin to offer the Blazers picks in 2028. And from their standpoint, it probably makes sense to look at our firsts, or to want our firsts after Dame leaves. That's what the Clippers did with or what the Thunder did with the Paul George trade to the Clippers. They took their draft picks after the player leaves, right? Out in the future. They didn't want the Clippers picks while they had Paul George. The goal is to have the picks afterwards when that team's actually bad and the picks are worth more. I believe New Orleans did this with the Drew Holiday trade to Milwaukee. So that actually, come to think of it now, this might not be as big of an inhibitor to the trade as I thought it would initially. It might be more worthwhile for Portland if we're offering them first round picks 2028, 2030, 2032 when the picks are bad because Dame's not on the team anymore. So, I think honestly, if you look at the formula for what Portland is supposed to want, we have everything unquestionably except for the young talent part of things, which is a subjective thing. That's ultimately not a set in stone thing. You don't go on 2K and look at people's overalls to determine this, right? Different basketball evaluators have different opinions on what a winning team looks like, and then consequently what talent is needed to come up with a winning team. And then like it's even subjective as to how good or not good individual players are. So you have to look at the league and identify the teams that would want to trade for Dame, identify their young talents, and then compare them to OG basically, because I think that's the main talent that would be on the table for Dame. So With that being the case, that probably wraps up the different things that need to be spoken about for this issue. We've covered a bunch of bases. We've covered Damian Lillard's angle, what he would want, what suits his desires, what suits um, what suits his desires, and like what are the factors internally that are going to dictate the situation. So in his case, how much conviction does he have in forcing his way to Miami? We've covered the Blazers angle for why it makes sense for them to be kind of secretive about what the truth is, and why it makes sense for them to leak to the media what they've leaked so far, regardless of what the case is. It's in their best interest to make everybody think that the rest of the league has an opportunity. It's not just about Miami. This is a bidding process, and everybody has a chance. We've talked about the Raptors angle on this and why it would probably be very convenient for them to land into a situation like this as a way to justify a lot of the errors and missteps that people identify with their process up to this point. And we've covered the rest of the league's angle in terms of maybe not seeing this as an opportunity unless you think you can win a championship right now. So, with all those things touched upon already, we'll have to see how this situation goes moving forward. Um, I'm sure more information will leak and more things will be made available for us in the way of rumors and news reports and these kind of things. So we'll be following this for sure, because it's the part of the offseason where I think a lot of free agency is done in terms of a lot of the big names have committed to teams. At this point now, you have to look at the trade market, right? All eyes are on who's going to get traded, and Dame is the big fish of the trade market. So we'll be monitoring this as it happens. Definitely, there's going to be more rumor roundups as more rumors arise. And if you want to be tapped in with that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, Toronto Hoop Talk. I'm going to be here giving you guys streams like this throughout the process. If you're watching this live right now, or if you're watching the replay afterwards, I want to thank you for being here. Make sure you're pressing the like button. Make sure you're subbed to the channel. You don't want to miss out on these streams. And the more you engage with them in the way of likes and comments, YouTube's algorithm views that as a positive, and it pushes it out to the YouTube audience further and further with the more engagement that it gets. And that's how the channel gets bigger and bigger, and that's going to allow me to make as much content as I would want to make. So if you appreciate what's going on, make sure to support, make sure to like the videos, comment on the videos, subscribe to the channel. With that being the case, I hope to get back tomorrow for the Gary Trent extension stream. But the thing is the numbers keep staying hidden. I have no idea what the extension is like in terms of years, in terms of money per year. We're still waiting on that, Rich Paul. So when we get that, we'll be going live as soon as I can afterwards. Any relevant news breaks in the way of a trade, I'll be live shortly afterwards, as soon as I can. And of course, as rumors arise and I see fit, I'll be also doing rumor stream. As Summer League approaches, I'll be doing Summer League streams. So like I said, lots of content coming for you guys in the future. Make sure you guys tapped in. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys around.